I want to welcome you to our panel discussion today with three of the top hotel experts in the hotel industry. We have Stephen Joyce from the Chief Executive of JOYCE Hotels, Simon Vincent, the President of Europe and the Middle East for Hilton Worldwide, and BARROS, Senior Vice President and Managing Director of Wyndham. When people found out that I was doing this panel, they warned me that MIPIM is not a big hotel event, so I'm very happy to see so many people in the audience. I actually feel it's a fascinating industry in a number of different ways. If you anyone with an interest in the economy in Europe should be interested in the hotel industry, because hotels are like the canary in the coal mine. They react very quickly to economic events. When things go bad, their vacancy shoots up very quickly. It's not like an office building that it takes years for that to happen. And then when the reverse happens, when things start improving, I don't know what the reverse of a canary in the coal mine is, but things, they see their occupancy rise very quickly. So certainly one of the things we're going to want to cover today is how our panelists view the economy and what they're seeing today sort of in real time in terms of any signs of economic improvement. I want to spend most of our time with a Q&A, but we're going to start where the panelists will make some introductory remarks, telling you a little bit about themselves and their company, and we're going to start with Mr. Joyce and take it from there.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you. Thank you. I'm standing up because it's bad enough, and sitting down makes it worse. Secondly, I'll be the longest, and that's because I paid the biggest fee to be here. So, but I am very pleased to have the opportunity to do this afternoon's keynote. I always enjoy a chance to talk with fellow hoteliers, especially here in Cannes, which is a little warmer than London and the rest of France that I was in earlier this week. 2 weeks ago, I was very disappointed when my favorite movie did not fare better at the Academy Awards. That was Victor Hugo's Les Miserables, especially since it included a song near and dear to my house, Master of the House, which the lyrics emphasize the cornerstones of success for the keeper of the inn, with the phrase, you have to be ready with a handshake and an open grin. Okay, I didn't think that was going to work either. All right, so I told them it would not play in Europe, but whatever. These days, though, maintaining competitive success in the hotel business has become increasingly more of a complex proposition. You've got to continually scan the environment, you've got to recognize changes in the economy and the markets and society, and then you have to accurately forecast how those changes will impact not just our industry, but particularly our guests. So what do we know about the current environment? On the industry side of the equation, we know that slow but steady economic growth is encouraging travel, and capital is beginning to loosen up, facilitating a likely expansion in hotel inventory over time. At the same time, land use policies and limited availability of space, particularly in urban markets, are heightening the importance of conversions and mixed-use buildings. What we know about our guests is that they have huge scars left over from the Great Recession, and fears of a double or even triple dip in GDP have prompted guests, leisure and business alike, to think twice about how and where they spend their money. They've been forced to prioritize, to think about what they really care about, trading off luxury that they no longer find critical while demanding the things that do matter to them. And our market segments have become increasingly fragmented. It's no longer a case of simply distinguishing business from leisure or defining them by income. There's a myriad of factors, including age, occupation, and culture, that force us to take a much more granular perspective on our target markets. And of course, tastes and preferences continually change. The same baby boomers who might have been happy to backpack across Europe 40 years ago today expect soundproof rooms and a flat screen television, and they want to be recognized at the front desk when they arrive in English. On the other hand, today's youth, the millennials, will book their room on their iPad, might sleep forward to a room, and let's not forget they want to know where we buy our products, what we're doing to protect the environment, and how we're making a difference in our local communities. And of course, all of us want free Wi-Fi everywhere. Actually, Wi-Fi that works as opposed to the hotels we're in. And don't get me started on the social media. This is not an aspect of our business, from bookings to ratings to development to marketing to staffing, that has not been significantly impacted by social media, for better or for worse. And it's a constantly moving target, one that you can't possibly get ahead of, but simply rather hope to stay abreast of and leverage effectively. And even though we're all working hard on this and putting a lot of money in, I have yet to see anyone who can remotely suggest any real return on those investments in social media. I'm sure it's coming, but it hasn't yet. So to say that the hotel business has become complex and challenging is an understatement. I've been in the business over 35 years, and lately I've come to understand I'm not just in the hotel business, I'm big time in the technology business, and that can be pretty exciting and pretty scary at the same time. Every market, including Europe, Asia, and the United States, has its own market dynamics, but one thing is universal: the way we are remaking and revitalizing our industry in response to nothing less than revolutionary changes in technology and consumer preferences. The threats and opportunities are unprecedented. 5 years from now, the distribution landscape will look very, very different from today, with some clear winners and losers as a result. So let's talk a little bit about the three major markets. Europe is still the largest regional travel market, but in the midst of austerity and high unemployment, the industry is taking it on the chin. After the global recession, looking at Europe today is a bit like watching a rerun of a bad movie in the United States. You know, while 2012 was better, 2013 here has started off sluggishly for most markets. We're assuming and hoping that it will pick up, but I think there's a lot to be proven yet this year. How much are travelers actually spending? You know, a few high rollers that like Bernard Arnault and follow his brands might be spending significantly, but that clearly distorts the picture. A survey of travel patterns in France, Germany, and the UK found that 1/3 of European travelers spend less than €1,000 a year on travel. That's reflected in generally flat RevPAR, with hotels leery of raising rates in the face of soft demand. Travelers are spending, but they're doing it very carefully. The break away from home and work, the chance to experience a different climate, culture, or lifestyle is still very important to folks on both sides of the pond, but they continue to compromise. They'll take shorter trips. Stays of 3 nights or less make up a much larger proportion of trips today than they did 3 years ago. Some trade away location, and they'll trade away perks for price. And be clear, the guests are put in a position to having to compromise to make trade-offs, but when they arrive at the property, they have higher expectations that we deliver on our end than ever. It would be easy to look at the economic picture and become discouraged, but there's a reason the Chinese alphabet uses the same character for crisis that it does for opportunity. Even in the midst of an economic downturn, there are still many opportunities. When guests are clearly focused on their top priorities, that presents an opportunity to identify the 2 or 3 things that matter most to them, that target segment, and concentrate on getting them right for that guest will result in success. For Choice Hotels, unlike many of the other brands who are talking a lot about Asia, we see big opportunity in Europe, with the fragmented European hotel landscape consolidating. European hotels has historically been unbranded. That trend is changing. Competing in e-commerce, social media, loyalty rewards, and broader distribution to drive traffic to your hotel is expensive, labor-intensive, and it used to be that the advent of the internet was a huge advantage to the independent hotelier because they could get to the customer and the customer could get to them. Now, with the advent of mobile and the 50 different devices the customers are going to book, it is hard for an independent hotel to be in all those devices. Affiliating with a brand company allows operators to focus on the day-to-day challenge of running their hotel while capitalizing on the many benefits afforded by a recognizable brand and robust distribution platform and the investment in that platform. With limited real estate, the pace of conversion to chain affiliation is picking up, and Choice believes it's a big opportunity for us, amongst others. Where other brand companies are more rigid in their brand requirements, Choice's flexibility allows for the individuality that defines and distinguishes European hotels. It's a strategic choice that we have made, granted with some trade-offs, but we believe one that's serving us well. When some chains look at a property with only 50, 60 room with 4 room types and an elevator that fits 1 guest in a suite suitcase. They see big problems, we see opportunity. Converting smaller hotels of all shapes and sizes in a network, that's what we do at Choice, but you can't do it by taking a cookie cutter and trying to make every hotel in France look like a clone of a hotel in Ohio. Many have tried. So while many of the major international companies are focused on Asia, Choice loves Europe. For one, it's much closer. The food is better. And it actually suits our service as well because it is primarily conversion oriented. So we're gaining some momentum here in France, for example. We established a strong partnership with the Hotel Group and have 7 hotels open with them in the market. And then in January, we announced a strategic relationship with Akron Hotels Group, a well-known regional operator in the UK that adds 11 hotels very quickly. 3 came online in February as Quality and Clearing Collections. There's 6 more hotels coming on rapidly, which we think at least 20 in the near term. Having recently made a multi-million-dollar investment in our technology platform and central reservation delivery system, we can offer a newly branded hotel what it needs to succeed in today's techno-supersized economy. That means physical investments with broader, more flexible brand requirements, which can save the owner money. It includes technology and services that would be cost prohibitive for an independent operator, but costs us nothing over our initial network setup costs. It includes automated back and front office processing at franchise properties. We offer technologies like our cloud-based property management system, Choice Advantage, which is installed in the UK and France and 5,500 hotels across the planet, with more on the way. It is the only massively distributed cloud-based platform on the planet. If you have access to the internet, you have access to our systems. No servers, no cabling, no air conditioning for the servers, no geeks for the servers. We provide internet booking and global reservation system and close relationships with key online travel agents and wholesalers. This month we announced an agreement with Booking.com to expand our distribution reach into 180 countries, and we offer one of the fastest growing rewards program in the industry, Choice Privileges, with nearly 17 million members. And what we do for independent owners is drive more people into their hotels and help them make their guest stay more satisfying, which makes them more successful. So you can see at Choice, we consider ourselves not only to be in the hotel business, but equally in the technology business. That ends the paid commercial, by the way, so I'll try to keep it to a minimum from here on in. Asia Pacific is at a different stage than Europe and in the United States. It is primarily, if you look at the major brand companies, going in a much more successful management environment than a franchise environment, depending on the market. And we recognize its potential and the striking growth in the GDP in many of those countries, the open skies agreements and big infrastructure investments. It's already overtaken the United States as the second largest travel market, but it's close on Europe's heels as well. We're in some of those markets. We're in Japan, for example, with 55 hotels, but in many of the markets like China and Vietnam, we are waiting for the right mix of independent operators and owners and partners in infrastructure to go big, which is why you'll see our focus here, while many of the other brands are focusing heavily on those markets. I guess I should say thank you to Simon, first of all, for all their efforts in Asia to train all those workers that hopefully eventually will work in a Choice hotel. And of course, you can't talk about Asia Pacific without discussing online and mobile. In Asia, gross online bookings are growing twice as fast as the overall market. Mobile penetration has topped 75%. The fastest growing online distribution channel in Asia is online travel agencies. Mobile is a space where we all have to be early and aggressively. All of us developed iPad apps. Choice was the first, but very quickly everyone else followed. Very quickly you had to follow with the iPad. You had to fit for all the GPS mapping systems. And while we view the electronic opportunity as significant, it is also a huge risk for those companies that are not represented in the devices that consumers choose. So there's a new phone out this morning. If that turns over to topple the iPhone, we're all going to want to make sure that our hotels are represented in that space, as well as every GPS mapping vehicle that may be in a car, as well as anything else the consumer may eventually carry. The tools are crucial in any hotel anywhere in the world. As one of the largest hotel franchisors, we feel it and everybody else feels it's their business to provide that. Which brings me to the U.S. market. The economy is heading in the right direction. Jobless claims are down, housing starts are up, consumers are spending again, albeit carefully. They're staying in hotels. Industry is outpacing the economy in growth and jobs. Room demand is up. RevPAR in the U.S. is supposed to grow about 5 to 6% this year. A big sign that the cycle is heading into the growth stage as developers are beginning to free up capital. And after years of actually very little supply growth, we're starting to see some investment. There is a significant concern, I'm sure you've heard about, with U.S. federal budget cuts known as the sequester. Some cuts have already gone into effect, while most will not hit right away but kick in over a number of years. Let's put it in perspective. The cuts would come into effect between now and 2021. This year's cuts amount to $85 billion, which is actually not a cut, it's a cut in the rate of growth. For us, that's a lot of money, but in Washington, it is relatively small change, because in Washington, they have a saying that $1 billion here and $1 billion there, pretty soon it adds up. I did hear this morning from Dr. Jürgen Stark about that he believes that America requires a plan. He's very upset with Timothy Geithner and all the suggestions he made for Europe. I did not make them, and I felt that I should jump up and defend America and their economic policy, but then I felt I could not, so I decided to sit in my chair anyway and listen to the lecture. Different sectors and regions will be affected in different ways. In the travel business, we may see impact. Threats to airport security, customs, and air traffic control may lengthen waiting times. Fortunately for Choice, we are not a heavy air travel company. We're more of a drive market company, so it will not affect us as much, but it will affect all travel, which will eventually affect us as well. Let's not forget there's a possible upside. If the cuts result in a deal to solve the real deficit problems, there will be significant encouragement to spend and invest. And then most of us in the hotel business believe the U.S. is in for a 5 or 6 year very strong run if the government does not get in the way. As I mentioned, tough economies bring opportunities. Many have faced the tremendous challenges of losing a job or seeing a small business fail, but I really believe that people are characterized by resilience. You know, we work with a lot of entrepreneurs hit by the recession. They saw franchising, as they did for many companies, as a solution, and their success is definitely a silver lining to the downturn. That is true in the United States as it is in Europe. The franchisees are crucial to our relative success and our future potential because they know and understand the customers. We all make it a priority to listen to them. They can link on our cloud-based property system with ideas and comments. We spend a lot of money putting their ideas into action. And while the economic downturn created another opportunity, we're seeing the emergence of this value traveler. Location, location, location is giving way to value, value, value. Free Wi-Fi, free parking, free breakfast. And what's uppermost in the consumer's mind are the things that will meet their personal needs and provide them convenience. Give it to them, and not only will they come back, they'll rave about their hotel to their friends before they leave the hotel. Nowadays, that starts while they're there. They're going to post a photo on Facebook with a description of the hotel, either positive or negative, and encourage visitors to come or stay away. I look at it this way. The leisure travelers are now using that hotel room as a substitute for their home for a few nights or a week. That's where they're going to sleep. That's where they're going to eat breakfast. If they have kids, that's where they're going to play. And we want to make sure they have a good time. To satisfy them, we need to know them. That's why the marketing strategies today need to combine demographics and psychographics to better understand what drives people, why they pick one hotel over another. We break the markets down into the most smallest, most digestible chunks possible and match them against our brands. And it also helps to have a wide range of brands, as all of us do. If you look at our industry, you know, we are, as a lodging business, a big player in the global landscape. Tourism is a lot more than a pastime. It is a lot more than a luxury. It is a big chunk of the global economy. The hotel industry drives tens of billions of dollars of investment and millions of jobs. It's an industry with both tremendous potential and its share of challenges. The competition is becoming more intense. Customers are becoming more discerning. Technologies are becoming more empowering and more elusive. And it all adds up to change, to challenges, to opportunities, but most of all, and probably like no other time in my career, a lot of excitement because there is a lot of opportunity fraught with a lot of peril. In a few moments, Rui BARROS is going to talk along with Simon. They'll tell you everything that I got wrong. But I will bet a free night in any Choice hotel that the one thing they'll agree with me on, this industry has never been exciting, and it's getting more and more exciting every day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. Simon, why don't you just give us a very brief introduction of who you are and how you fit into the great scheme of things. And also, it would probably be helpful, I mean, it certainly was helpful for me when we spoke on the phone, for you to just give a brief history of Hilton and how the company has evolved.
Okay, well, I'm Simon Vincent. I'm president of Hilton Worldwide for Europe, Middle East and Africa. The Hilton Worldwide Group operates about 4,000 hotels worldwide in 90 countries. We have 10 brands, right the way from budget through to our luxury brands. A lot of our growth is internationally, outside of Americas, and that is born out of the history of Hilton Worldwide, which up until 2006 and since the 1960s was essentially run as two separate companies: Hilton Hotels Corporation, quoted on the New York Stock Exchange, owned in part by the Hilton family, and Hilton International, which historically was traded on the London Stock Exchange, owned by Ladbrokes Group. It was only when those two groups came together as part of a significant transaction at the end of 2006 that we started to expand all of the brands internationally. Up until that point, only Hilton and the Conrad brand had really been represented internationally, and that's what lies behind a lot of our growth. If you look at our pipeline today, we have 4,000 operating hotels. We have a further 1,000 in our pipeline that are due to open over the course of the next 3 years. Much of that growth is in the international arena. If you go back 5 years, 15% of our pipeline would have been international. Today, well over 50% of our pipeline is now in the international arena, and we're growing into not only the Asian markets, but in Europe, in Africa, and in the Middle East. So significant growth opportunity for us within Hilton, and in reality that also reflects the fundamentals in the business, where there is an imbalance between supply and demand in a lot of the international markets. There is a lack of good quality international hotel brands in a lot of markets, particularly the emerging markets in Africa, in the Middle East, in Eastern Europe in particular. So that's what's fueling our growth, and that's where we see the major opportunity.
Oh, and could you just mention a little bit about your ownership? You're owned by Blackstone, correct?
Yeah, so Blackstone bought the combined entity of Hilton Hotels Corporation and Hilton International in 2007, a significant private equity transaction, and they've been significant investors in both property, real estate and hotels, and hotels are becoming an increasingly significant proportion of their portfolio, and Hilton Worldwide is their single largest investment.
And it's widely expected that Blackstone will eventually take Hilton public. If you want to make some news today, you could discuss those plans if you like.
I don't think Chris Nassetta would give me any credit for making any comment about that. I mean, look, the business model of Blackstone is the business model, and they'll decide what they do with the investment in due course, I'm sure.
Okay, thank you. Rui, why don't you give us a little bit of your background and Wyndham, and as well as its expansion efforts.
Yeah, happy to. And by the way, you didn't get anything wrong. Thank you. The only thing I would have suggested is burst out into song when we're referencing Les Miserables. So I'm not going to say. I'm not going to say. Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Roy BARROS, also known as Rui BARROS for those who are Portuguese in the room. Tell you a little bit about the company. So Wyndham Hotel Group is one of the businesses we're in, but the company is Wyndham Worldwide, and we're actually represented in 3 different disciplines. Wyndham Vacation Ownership, which is one of our business units. That's our vacation ownership business. It's the largest vacation ownership business in the world. Wyndham Exchange and Rentals, which is our timeshare exchange business, RCI is a part of that. So that is the largest exchange business in the world. And then you've got Wyndham Hotel Group, which I'll expand upon a little bit more. Wyndham Hotel Group is also the largest hotel company in the world as measured by number of hotels. We actually have 73, and it's a moving target because we open roughly 2 properties a day, so we're growing very rapidly. So we're at about 7,300 hotels worldwide, 66 countries. So it's a very, very large organization. But you know what's interesting about Wyndham Hotel Group is that although we're large and the largest, we like to look at our customers and our business as a very regionalized. So meaning we want to be very flexible and want to work with our customers. So that's one of the things I wanted to put out there. 15 brands in our wheelbarrow, which is great. My counterparts have multiple brands as well. I think that's a great thing to have because in a market like the ones we're growing in, it's important that you have various brand options to be able to enter the market, whether that's a 3-star or 4-star or whatever it might be. So that's where we are. We also have a loyalty program, 7 million active members, largest loyalty program based on number of properties. Those are all my disclaimers that I have to put out there. And that's generally it. Just to talk a little bit about our growth strategies, I'm looking after EMEA, Europe, Middle East, and Africa. We too see a lot of growth in Europe, Middle East, and Africa, frankly. Eastern Africa in particular, we're looking to expand into those markets, Ethiopia, Tanzania, Kenya, those areas. But there's a lot of growth potential in Europe even. So Germany is a key market for us that we're focused in on. Recently, 2 weeks ago during the Berlin conference, we announced our partnership with Grand City, where we opened 32 out of the 43 hotels that we signed throughout Germany, and we anticipate to continue to grow there. In EMEA, we represent about 370 hotels right now. We have about nearly 600 in Asia Pacific, and about 100 in Latin America. So the lion's share, as you could tell, of the 7,300 are in North America for the most part. So that's who we are, and you know, I keep it short. I know there's some questions that maybe we can field and talk a little bit more about the business.
Yeah, let's continue on talking about growth strategy, because it's, in a way, it sounds a little counterintuitive to be growing in Europe right now. Don't you guys know that there's a financial crisis taking place? But nevertheless, all 3 of your companies are pursuing pretty aggressive growth strategies. So, Simon, maybe you could talk a little bit about why you see there's opportunity despite the economic downturn, and also, I mean, this was new to me. Perhaps it's not new to the or news to people in the audience, but the 3 of you don't own your own hotels. When you talk about growing, you're not going out and buying hotels. So maybe that's part of it. That it's not you grow, but not by investing capital. So perhaps you could discuss that part of your business model.
Yeah, I mean, in general, the industry has adopted an asset-light model. That having been said, we operate in various segments of the market. You know, we operate a franchise proposition, particularly strongly in the US. That's becoming more prominent internationally for us. We also operate under management agreements, but also under lease agreements where it may indeed be our own capital that is part of a particular transaction. We own very few assets. We own some, but predominantly our flagship assets in the United States. So mixed models, but you're right. Much of the development activity is utilizing other people's capital, if you like. But what we bring is the strength of the brand and the operating system and the commercial engines that sit behind each of those individual brands. And the reason we're growing so fast internationally, I touched upon, is the imbalance that is there between supply and demand in particular markets. I mean, a lot of our growth in Europe, for instance, is in Eastern Europe. So we're seeing a lot of growth in Russia, a lot of growth in Poland, Romania, Bulgaria, Czechoslovakia, markets like that. Having said that, in more established markets, there is opportunity for further consolidation. And one of our fastest growing brands right now is DoubleTree. And a lot of the growth that we're seeing is in converting existing hotel operations that want access to the commercial engine and the brands and the loyalty programs that Hilton Worldwide can offer. So the market remains pretty fragmented in Europe, and there will be consolidation, and consolidation through conversion. Africa is very different. It's an emerging market for us again, and we see a lot of opportunity there. I mean, if you think when Nelson Mandela took power, there were only 2 democracies, I think, at the time in Africa. There's now over 30. You're seeing a sea change in the economic and the social and the political environment in Africa, and that investment tends to follow that. So, we're exploiting that very strongly.
Well, when we spoke on the phone, you mentioned your hotel at the Frankfurt Airport, a recent addition to your hotel portfolio. I thought that was particularly sort of emblematic of what your strategy is and how you're executing. So perhaps you could just go into a little bit of detail about how that whole opportunity came about and how you executed.
Yeah, for those of you that may or may not know, the Frankfurt Airport, we've just opened a Hilton Garden Inn combination at Frankfurt Airport. It's part of what was the largest real estate development in Europe, financed by IVG, and is a mixed-use development, office space and transportation links, both for rail and air. But also a big retail setup. And what we've done there is put a Hilton Garden Inn combination together. So we're at 2 price points in the marketplace, looking to attract 2 distinct customer base, but leveraging off the same infrastructure. And in many ways, if you look at airline companies and cruise companies, they've been doing this for years in the way that they distinguish between first class and business class and economy class, and leverage that same infrastructure. So it's an innovation in the hotel industry that I think you're going to see more of.
Yeah, I think going back to the other point about why Europe, I think if you look at the fact that the hotels are struggling, they're fighting for revenue without the prospect of any significant growth near term, people are starting to think about, how do I shift share? And if you look at if your revenue generation is being dominated by the OTAs at a considerably higher cost.
OTAs.
I'm sorry, online travel agents. So the Expedias and the bookings and the other channels out there. And if those costs are higher than what you might pay to join a system, then a lot of folks are looking at as it may be. They may have upside from the revenue, but they're certainly going to have cost avoidance. And then on top of that, I think as people look at the distribution environment and how complex and how rapidly changing it is, I mean, we all built, phone apps for the Droid and for the iPhone, and then you turn around and look 6 months later, and not all, but 60% of the bookings were coming from pads, not from the phones, because it's hard to see the app on the phone. So then you have to run and do a pad app, and then you have 5 different pads that are out there, and which ones do you want to be on? So the reality is the distribution game is driving a reinvestment requirement that's very difficult for an independent hotel to satisfy, or an association that doesn't have real funding ability. And so I think between the need for higher revenues and that distribution environment, I think a lot of independent hoteliers are looking for opportunities to try to retain a sense of their own property, but at the same time get the benefits of a large brand that has the money to make those investments.
Right. Would you agree?
Yeah, I actually do. The cost of distribution, I don't know if there's a lot of operators in the room, probably not hotel operators, but it'd probably be interesting to you to understand what the value is that a brand can bring to the table. I think one of the things that you want to take away is when selecting a brand is what value can they bring to you in terms of driving revenue, but then what can they do as it relates to mitigating costs. And Steve's very right. The cost of distribution can be considerable. I mean, you get into these online travel agencies that he was talking about. You start to rack up those fees, and we measure our top line in our business, in the hotel business, with RevPAR, right, revenue per available room, to begin to measure how we're doing. And in some markets, what we're finding is RevPAR is recovering, so you get a rate of growth there. But unfortunately, your GOP is not recovering at the same rate. So what that's, and when you dig into it, obviously there's cost associated with that. There's overhead costs and other variable costs that play into it. But one of the pieces that continues to grow exponentially actually is the cost of distribution. And what a brand can bring to the table, among other things, right? So you got marketing and training and support and brand recognition and all of those things. But I think when you get down to the nitty-gritty and you determine, dollars and cents, the cost of distribution is a big piece. So I agree 110%, and that's one of the things we're really focused on, not just in EMEA, but globally. Wyndham Worldwide in particular is very focused on driving as much business to low-cost distribution channels as we can, because ultimately it's helping both sides, helping your top line and helping your bottom line. I'll go back to why Europe, because I hear that all the time. It's kind of like, well, you're growing. Do you not know that there's financial issues in Europe? Yes, we do, but it's not everywhere, right? Even in the UK, we opened 7 hotels this year. So in the UK, we opened 10 new hotels in Turkey. We opened 32, in Germany just 2 weeks ago. So there's development there. And what you need to focus in on is, where are these growth markets? And frankly, even those that are struggling a little bit financially, if it's the right product in the right market, it just needs some additional support, it's opportunities for us to grow. So I do agree.
Perhaps we could talk a little bit about some of these emerging markets like Turkey or Eastern Europe, where they pretty much, the Western hotel is kind of a novel concept in a lot of cities. And so how do you introduce that, and what's the appeal? And
well, for us, what we found, particularly Turkey, so zoning in on Turkey, there is an interest in associating and doing business with global companies. So, Turkey for us was, Ramada is a brand that really has taken hold in that country. We will likely, in the pipeline, have about 100 hotels in Turkey. So I think there's that. And also, when you get in certain markets like Turkey, financing isn't that big of an issue there. There's a lot of private funding going on and all of that. So, so for us, it was about introducing the brand, introducing the global footprint of our organization, and that's one of the things that sort of sets us apart a little bit. Is that we're not just in the hotel business, right? We're in the hospitality business. So when Wyndham Worldwide is presented as an option, we talk about the leverage that you have for Wyndham Hotel Group as much as we talk about our exchange company, as much as we talk about our vacation ownership, because we tie those businesses together to create scale, whether that be from a procurement standpoint or a loyalty standpoint and all of that. So there's been a lot of interest, not just in Turkey, but you look at Latin America, Asia Pacific. There's been a lot of interest getting involved with global brands.
So the three of you actually compete with each other in terms of trying to sign up franchises in these various markets. What's your competitive advantage? Steve, I know when we spoke, you talked a little bit about the fact that you can use your balance sheet. Does that help?
Yeah, I think it does, but I think all of us, actually, if you look at any of the portfolio deals that get done or a major urban center, there's some contribution coming from the brand company someplace. So that's actually new to the game for Choice. These folks have been doing it for a while. So we have a very strong balance sheet. We're capable of co-investing. So we are doing that for multiple property deals or major urban center type deals where you'll do sliver, but co-investment in whatever form the owners or their partners like to see. So it could be equity, it could be mezzanine, it could be forgivable prom notes, it could be key money. So there's lots of different ways to do it. And so that is something that's, I think, helping us attract folks that maybe wouldn't have looked at us before. We compete sort of on a brand by brand basis. So the discussions, depending on at what level we're working, there is, and so, clearly one of the things we talk about are the costs of conversion, because with our technology platform, we think that gives us a real opportunity because folks don't need to go out and buy all new equipment, which is probably one of the biggest costs of a conversion opportunity. And then the other thing for us, which depending on what they're looking for from a brand, we are, from the standpoint of our brands, more flexible in terms of the look and feel. We're looking for general overall condition and not exactly which carpet was picked. My former company, their head would explode with the wrong color carpet. So
That was what company?
that was Marriott. That was just, well, it was very interesting, very different. And we'd bring the life safety guy over, and he would look at, a 100-year-old hotel and want sprinklers running down the middle of the hallway. So we're much more comfortable living with what the code is in the city. We're much more flexible on the design and look and feel of the hotel. We're looking for service levels and a general level conditioning, and then we can make that conversion relatively cost effective because of this cloud-based technology platform that doesn't require any of the equipment. And then, and then we all will make our own claims about production and customers based on rewards programs and everything else. But I think for Choice, probably the biggest single advantage we've got is that technology platform and then the flexibility around the look and feel of the hotel.
Simon, what is your competitive edge?
Well, listen, I mean, I think we'll all sit here and claim that we've got the strongest brands and the best commercial engines. But look, aside from that, I think the thing that we decided to do strategically is to invest in development resource in the markets in which we were seeking to expand. And we put people on the ground in those markets that knew the markets and were able to develop the partnerships with what would hopefully become long-term partners. And I think the other key to our success was that we've really focused on developing relationships with people who are capable of doing multiple deals. And it is all about the partnership approach in terms of our development pipeline and our expansion, and having people in local markets knowing the markets and the individuals that are likely to be significant investors in those markets is a significant advantage.
And will Hilton use its balance sheet to assist in development or acquisition?
Yeah, we will on a selective basis. Yeah, absolutely. If the deal is right, we'll put money into the deal. No question.
Bree?
Yeah, ditto. Competitive advantage over Steve is I can sing. So
Okay, you got it.
I'm just playing. Boy, tough crowd, man. You guys loosen up. Go have a glass of wine.
Maybe you should start singing. Well,
Yeah.
They
Fly
had
me to the moon.
They had wine for lunch.
Yeah,
I
they
think
did.
that's part of
Okay,
it.
right. I'm not going to go into the loyalty programs, things like that. I think we all have very powerful programs that you would assess on your own. I would say probably the component that makes that sort of sets us apart beyond sort of these a broader look at the industry in which we play is, and I was going to use the word choice, but maybe I use selection because it kind of goes back to the various brands that we have that compete in various markets. So, and particularly when you get into markets where you're dealing with portfolios. If you're dealing with a portfolio, you have multiple assets, you have multiple product types. The condition might be a bit different along the way. It might be a 3-star, 4-star, 5-star, whatever it might be. It might have 2 restaurants, it might have 1. A variety of different things. I think what Wyndham can bring to the table is selection. And so we typically have a solution for whatever asset you may have, and particularly when you get into a portfolio. So that for us, unless it's a hostel that just doesn't fit strategically with any of our brands, typically we have a brand that will fit into that, all the way up to a 5-star, down to the budget category. So I think that would probably be our greatest advantage, and all of our distribution channels and loyalty programs and focusing on the cost of distribution, all that stuff, training, and I think you'll get that from all of us. But when you evaluate your choices, it's one of the things you want to look at.
One of the other things that I would say is I'm very good friends with Simon's boss, and I can tell you honestly, he is not a good man. No, it was a joke. It's a joke. It's a joke.
More wine, please.
Do any of you find opportunity in distressed assets? I mean, obviously, banks are sitting on a lot of problem loans throughout Europe. Are there opportunities for you to step in with your franchise, with your brands, with your flags, and offer them some solutions?
Yeah, I mean, look, our development team have got very close relationships with, bankers, financiers, and our existing ownership groups. And on a daily basis, they're talking to to key individuals about any potential opportunities. I mean, a very good example would be the Mint acquisition last year. For those of you that know the UK markets, we took over a portfolio of hotels that were previously City Inns that were rebranded Mint hotels. That portfolio was in distress, and we integrated 8 hotels in a very short period of time into our portfolio. So there are deals there to be done. I mean, there's a lot of speculation about various other portfolio deals that may be coming up and may present opportunities going forward, but that's the daily cut and thrust of the development team.
Right.
And I think that's coming more, because if you look at the States, you had lots of private equity going into distressed debt situations, buying their way into the first, and then getting control of the properties that way. We just did a big deal with Colony Capital for the Jameson Inns transaction. It was about 43 hotels for us. They got the other half, actually. And you could see that in the States because the bankers had begun moving on the properties and are ready to take them back or move the debt. You can see that, I think, beginning to build in Europe, where it has been more of what the States were for several years, which was keep rolling them over with the hope that something might happen. And now I think you're starting to see some of the banks begin to stiffen, and you're seeing people looking at whether or not distressed investments would make sense. And then typically what will happen is when they get into them, then they'll start looking for ways to improve performance and shed some of the debt and look for co-investors as well, and that's when they'll engage a brand partner as well. So we've got several situations in the States, and we're beginning to look at a couple of those situations here as well.
Can you elaborate on specifics at all?
No.
I didn't think so.
Because these guys will call them right after we're done.
Yeah, I'll write that down.
Right.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think I'll add one thing, and that is that we see that those as opportunities. It has to be the right operator too, right? So I mean, if there's a distressed asset, putting the right brand, the right operator together. There's been several deals, portfolio deals we've worked on as well. In some cases, you've got assets that are in A locations, but it's a B asset or a C asset because it just hasn't been looked after, hasn't been operated correctly. We're very interested in those kinds of scenarios because, frankly, with the right brand, the right operator, you can turn that asset around. So, yeah, we're very interested in those opportunities.
Is there much competition on fees? Because obviously, if a hotel owner signs up with you, their fees, their management fees, or franchise fees that they have to pay. I mean, can you negotiate in that sense, or is it pretty fixed? So Steve, I think you told me that you're flexible in that area.
Well, we flex when these other guys give. No, obviously in today's environment with the competition for deals, there is sort of negotiation over the deals. I will say what Choice typically does is we're looking to get to a certain fee level. We will not necessarily negotiate off of that, but we will negotiate over the length of time it takes to reach that fee level. And then depending on the deal, if someone's looking for capital, then that changes that equation pretty dramatically. But, there is competition. The owners are more and more aware of what they're paying. They're more than willing to entertain offers from several different flag companies at the same time. Depending on the strength of the brand and how much you're going to deliver, that goes into the equation. Some folks have been established. The Hilton guys have been established a lot longer than we have. We got to work a little harder and be a little more aggressive, we think, in order to win some of those deals. And so it's like, it's a combination. But yes, they are negotiable. We want to get to a certain level, but the timing of that and then the amount of incentive that we may be able to give either in fee deferrals or fee ramps or those types of activities is part of the business.
Yeah, and the one thing I would add to that is we like to be flexible as well and creative with the fees. So, for example, I'm not a big fan of cutting marketing fees, just because marketing fees are designed to go back into driving business to the properties. And so, but where we sometimes get flexible is sometimes we need to infuse that marketing, that spend back into a specific market, or if it's our first branded property in a particular market, then that's some things that we would negotiate to make sure that those dollars are being used to the benefit of that hotel in that market. So we get creative in that way, but yeah, generally we do negotiate.
Simon, creativity, or you're Hilton, you don't need to.
No, listen. I mean, every deal is a negotiation, but we've got a clear framework, and there are lots of parameters within that framework that we can work with the partner on flexing to meet their needs and to make sure we don't compromise our needs. So.
We only have a few minutes more. I did want to touch on boutique hotels, and they're all the rage in New York right now. So could you talk a little bit about how that enters your strategy in Europe? What are your latest brands, and are they popular in some countries and not others, or it's taking off all over?
We operate internationally. We operate 6 of the 10 brands that the Hilton-wide portfolio has at its disposal. We're not currently in the boutique side of the market. It's an interesting segment. It's a segment we've looked at, but we've got no current plans to do anything in that respect.
Steve?
Yeah, we see it as a big opportunity, both in the States and here. So, and what that really represents is that independent, truly boutique operator that doesn't want any help with their property or who they are, but want to be part of a system. So you've seen a couple of these of the entrance of some new type of brands. We have one that we call Ascend, which is primarily in the States, but we've got some in the Caribbean and some in Canada, and we're looking at some properties here. And Ascend is really, it's a little different because it's not a brand. We have a plaque, but you can put it in the men's room for all we care. And what it represents is a pure purchase of distribution. So we don't help you operate your hotel. We make sure the conditioning's right, and we check the guest scores. But other than that, you're on your own from that perspective. But what we are selling you is marketing, distribution systems, technology, and the ability to take advantage of being part of a system. And as a result of that, you pay a lower fee to do that. And so we've done that. We also have worked with a number of boutique-type properties through something we call Clearing Collection here, which is a little more of a strong branding opportunity. But we are looking at both that and Ascend as an opportunity to reach out to the boutique and independent and historic hotels that like the nature of where they are and want to stay exactly that way. But want to be part of a system. And we've had great success with that in the States. We started out with about 20 properties, and we're now almost at 100 in about a 2-year span. So, and we're looking to expand that to Europe. In Europe, it's a little more difficult for us. Clearing Collection works a little better because the Clarion brand is better known. Bringing a brand new brand here. In the States, we drive very strong distribution. We're beginning to drive better distribution here, but it's not at the level of the U.S. So the Ascend Collection will be something that I think will emerge over time.
Ray?
Yeah, we're really not interested in creating new brands at this point. We have 15 of them, 9 of them of which we're developing internationally. So, for us, it's just about maximizing the brands that we currently have. When you look at our offering, one of the brands actually I think has a huge potential in EMEA as an extended stay brand. So Hawthorne by Wyndham is our extended stay brand. And frankly, when you get into markets like the Middle East and even now in Turkey, there are certain markets where that type of product there's demand for it. So I think we're going to be focusing on that. And keep in mind, boutiques. When you look at our brand selection, when you get into certain brands where we allow some additional flexibility, depending on where the location of the brand or that property is and the brand that they're going with, we're willing to work with any of our asset owners if it makes sense in terms of design and concept without sacrificing the essence of the brand and the brand standards. If there's an opportunity to sort of put a bit of a boutique spin on it, perfectly fine doing that. But why not do that and have the power of a global brand behind it? So I think that I'm not speaking poorly about the boutique concept, but I think you can apply that to a global brand. So for us, it's not about adding brands. For us, it's maximizing the brands we have.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to finish off where I began and then open the floor to questions if anyone has them. And so I started off talking about hotels being the canary in the coal mine, and they very much reflect current sort of real-time economic conditions. From what you've heard from your properties over the last week or so, or last, I mean, do you see any signs of an improvement? Are bookings going up? Is RevPAR going up, or going down? Or I mean, as a sort of barometer of economic conditions in Europe, how do you read them?
Listen, we're extremely bullish about where we stand at the moment. I think the hotel sector, you're right, is, to use your analogy, a canary in the coal mine. If you look at the RevPAR and you look at how the RevPAR dipped in 2008, it dipped steeper and deeper than it's ever dipped before. But notoriously, the sector is cyclical. If you go back over 15, 20 years and you look at those even longer, 40 years, you look at those 7-year cycles, you can clearly see the pickup. And we're, just as we went down very steeply, we recovered very strongly. And there was almost a perfect V-shaped recovery on a global basis in RevPAR terms. And most markets now are above their 2007 levels. And we are getting rate compression in a lot of our markets. So we're very bullish. I mean, there's some challenges out there quite clearly. Some markets are, are going to take some time to recover, but in a general basis, we're very bullish, and we've seen 3 years of RevPAR growth, and we're very optimistic.
Uri, would you agree?
Yeah, we're experiencing the same thing, and I think we'll all say the same thing. It's all about capturing more than our fair share of the market. So I mean, we're seeing that we're capturing more market share from our competitors, which is great. But again, I go back to what our focus is, and our focus is really cost of distribution, and how do we maximize the revenue that recovery that's coming in, and how we maximize that down to the bottom line. So it really focuses back onto our direct strategies. What can we do to reduce the cost of distribution, drive more property or more business through direct channels at a lower cost to the property owners? But yeah, I agree with Simon. I mean, it's there's certain markets that continue to be a struggle, but I mean, I think we're heading in the right direction for sure.
Steve?
I might be a little less bullish, and I think it's partly because of location. Simon tends to be more heavily urban and city center, and I would agree. I think those are going to be the strongest markets for the year. If you look at last year was a pretty good year for everybody, but the city centers led it, and I think that's going to happen again this year. I am a little concerned about the way the year started out. January and February were pretty soft. March is looking much better, and April's looking better. So there's a sense of our folks that the ones that are not urban related, not city center, that they are going to do okay during the year, but it is going to be a marginal year that will take through really April before we see how much over last year will be. I think our view is in the suburban and tertiary markets, it's probably for overall Europe, and it varies a little country by country, but you're probably looking at a slightly positive environment for those markets, and then a stronger environment for the urban and city center type product.
Okay, thank you. Unfortunately, we probably only have time for 1 or 2 questions. Are there any in the audience? Yes, sir?
I have a question about apartment hotels. I think it was a big kind of trend up until 2008, especially in America, with properties having that apart condo hotel concept. Is that something you participate in? Do you see like a positive future for those? I'm involved in one in Montenegro, and it's been successful, but I'd like to see what your views are in the future for that concept.
Yeah, so I think we heard him. Yeah. Going back to that, this is where I see there's an opportunity there, and from our perspective, it's about extended stay. I mean, so the apartment concepts that I'm seeing, there's a need for, or a market demand for accommodations that has kitchen facilities and things of that nature that can accommodate longer stays, and we have a brand for that. So, again, I think if there's an opportunity like that, and there's several that we're looking at, we look to see how Hawthorne can plug into that. So we have a brand for that. We do believe that there is a way to kind of merge those two together, because to some degree they're sort of separate businesses right now. But we think that we can kind of bring them a little bit closer together, and there's upside there. So our approach to that opportunity is with our Hawthorne by Wyndham brand.
Is that your question? Were you talking about condo strata title hotels?
I mean like the apartment hotel concept, which obviously means the investor doesn't have to put as much into
So he's buying an individual unit. The answer is it depends on where you are and what the laws are there. So, for example, we're fairly large in Brazil. Most of the hotel, they call them flat hotels or condo hotels, most of the hotels in Brazil getting developed are through that condo structure. They're what you expect. They're doctors and lawyers that own one unit. It is, in markets that are tough to find financing, it is a way to get hotels done. Brazil, just difficult financing environment, low levels of leverage. So it's the way you get hotels done. Look, we used to do them in the States. We call them limited partnerships. Having 550 owners is not better than having one. Okay, so it depends on, in the States, most of those sales, a true strata title in the States is a security, which makes the regulation of it ridiculous and the cost of doing it not worth it. And they had a bubble in the States that burst. Most of the deals turned out badly for everyone. So you're seeing that's kind of gone away. But where you see it working is, there's a strong strata title in a number of countries. Canada still does it in a fairly significant way. It's sort of the way you get hotels done in Brazil. So market by market, I think what you'd find is, like for our company, we're very interested in it, provided the local laws don't make it a security. You're allowed to pool the hotel rooms. You sell them as a unit, but you don't have to record individual room revenues and costs. That makes it the pooling concept, which is the strata title concept. If that's available, then we're very interested.
Okay, well, thank you all. These numbers are all staring at us saying zero, so I guess our time is up, but it was a very interesting and informative discussion. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.